and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Annalise Poorman. The Monroe County Commissioners voted on a rezone request at 4851 North Kinzer Pike at their meeting on April 26. Senior Planner Drew Myers presented the request from petitioner Tim Rolfson.
This is a rezone request from RE1 to Ag-RR, or State Residential 1 to Agricultural Rural Reserve. It is at 4851 North Kinzer Pike. It's in Bloomington Township, Section 8. It is unplatted, and the comprehensive plan designates this area as farm and forest. So the petition site is one parcel totaling 19.341 acres. Petitioner is proposing to amend the zoning map from State Residential 1 to Agricultural Reserve, with the intention behind it to rezone the property and proceed with a commercial site plan filing for the use of a winery on the property. Now, a winery is not permitted in the RE1 zoning district, but it is a permitted use in the Ag-RR district. There is one condition for a winery use in the Ag-RR district, and that is condition number 53, which reads only permitted on acres greater than 5 acres or more in the Ag-RR, FR, or CR districts. If approved, the petitioner intends to complete the planning process for the establishment of a winery, including the commercial site plan filing, which is subject to all standards and requirements, including but not limited to parking, paving, landscaping, soil erosion control, and bioretention if necessary. If denied, the petitioner may continue to operate the property as a single-family residence, which was the previous use, or may pursue any of the available uses as outlined in Chapter 833 for the RE1 zone, as long as any of those special conditions that may be listed in that chapter for that particular use can be met.
Myers explained that the petitioner is requesting the rezone to establish a winery on the property. The current zoning on the property is a State Residential 1. Rolfson is requesting it be changed to Agricultural Rural Reserve.
The petitioner is looking to do a winery. And the winery definition, as you can see, does include some defining characteristics that pertain to some of its accessory uses, such as tasting facilities, promotional sale of items, and other winery operations.
Myers shared that the Plan Commission discussed this rezone request at multiple meetings. He said they did reach a positive recommendation with a vote of 6-3. The recommendation was passed with 3 conditions. 1,
the petitioner submit a right-of-way activity permit application. 2, the written commitment be reviewed and approved by the Monroe County Legal Department. And 3, the written commitment include additional language regarding a 14-day deadline for its reporting.
Myers summarized the main concerns that the staff heard from neighbors in the area who submitted letters of opposition to the winery.
A lot of the opposition from the neighbors or the public was concern for the traffic increase and the just having a commercial activity in a quiet residential area. There was also a concern for light pollution, noise pollution, pollution from the farming activities on the site, as well as possible wildlife disruption in the area. So here's a few more, 2 more on this page, letters of opposition. Members of the public were also concerned about the increase in traffic for this business activity and the concern for little 500 cyclists in general, as well as runners along this route on North Kinzer Pike.
The petitioner, Tim Rolfson, spoke to the commissioners about the neighbors' concerns.
First, I'd like to clarify the nature of the proposed facility, as we're in no way attempting to be an event center or otherwise make events, large or small, the focus of our operations. It seems the potential for very unlimited outdoor events has confused the intent of our winery and tasting room with an actual purpose-built event center, which, unlike our winery, hosts weddings and other big gatherings as a primary source of revenue. Through discussions with neighbors, we've come to realize a lot of misinformation has been distributed, which led to concerns we heard from neighbors. In contrast to an event center, our proposed facility would include a winery, which is designed to process fruit and produce wine, and a connected tasting room that will provide a relaxing environment for our patrons. For what it's worth, the inside is an open concept soft seating. It'll feature 2 small 163 square foot rooms for people that want to invite some of their friends over for private tasting, or if somebody from the county or a cook or some other company said, hey, we'd like to have a meeting, can we rent one of your rooms? That's about as far as an event goes for us. And for reference, our tasting room has a maximum capacity of 60 individuals, and the parking lot will have 40 spaces.
During public comment, Monroe County resident Jana Hasty said that the goals of the winery would always be in opposition to the goals of the homeowners.
The homeowner's first priorities will always be residential, while Mr. Rolson's will be commercial. And no matter what assurances Mr. Rolson offers the residents, his goal will be to turn a profit, and his business practices will evolve toward the goal in response to opportunities that present themselves, like retreats, weddings, and other events. People choose to buy homes in an area that had 2 qualities, rural and residential. This winery introduces 2 new qualities, public and commercial. These are not aligned with the homeowner's choice of location. If we wanted to live in a busy commercial area, we would have purchased our homes in one. This is not only about homeowners, this is about the importance of preserving rural spaces that are increasingly diminishing in our county. As we look at the possibility of annexation in the Bloomington area and increased commercial space encroaching on rural spaces, we have the responsibility to protect these spaces.
Also during public comment, Monroe County resident Paul Gray said that he has seen Oliver Winery grow over the years and expects that this winery would be the same.
He talks a lot about Oliver Winery. Oliver Winery is pretty good size now. I remember when it started out in a house. Once the house burnt, they built a larger facility, and it's increased ever since. If he starts a winery there, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to start out whatever he starts it at, and it's going to keep increasing in size, as long as there's property there for him to do so.
The commissioners voted to deny the rezone request, with Penny Giffens voting yes, and Commissioners Julie Thomas and Lee Jones voting no. And we'll have more CATSweek after this message.
I'm at risk of thinking there's just no point in trying.
I'm at risk of looking in the mirror and hating what I see.
I'm at risk of being told not to tell.
But with Girls Inc. in my corner,
I will not be another statistic.
I will fight for myself.
With you in my corner, I will win.
Fuel her fire and she will change the world. Girls Inc.
Welcome back to CATSweek. During the Bloomington Board of Public Works meeting on April 25th, the board heard a right-of-way dedication on West 1st Street. Public Improvements Manager for the city, Maria McCormick, explained the proposal.
This is a right-of-way dedication on West 1st Street. A building had 3 parcels were rezoned, and out of that rezoning, the city was given 6 foot of right-of-way along South Morton Street. And that's so that it lines up with the Hopewell right-of-way.
The board approved the right-of-way dedication by a 3-0 vote. Next, the board heard a lane and sidewalk closure request from AEG. City engineer Jason Kerr explained the request.
This is for the continuation of the citywide fiber project. The area of this section is surrounding East Burks Drive, which is to the south of town. AEG is also requesting at this time to do Saturday hours from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. The Saturday hours would only be to perform the work of fiber pulling or restoration work, which should not impede too much on traffic during those times. Of course, they'll be shutting down closer, in the afternoon, not going into the evening or the night hours.
Vice President of the board, Elizabeth Carone, asked her for clarification on the Saturday hours for the lane and sidewalk closure.
They're looking to do it continuous from here on out, to kind of, I think, catch up on some things and get the fiber pulled Now, if they have one neighborhood with a fiber in it, I think they're just really wanting to jumpstart and get as much fiber pulled as they can to these different areas.
Board President Kyla Cox-Deckard also asked for clarification on the scope of the project.
So then does that mean that it's affecting all of the requests going forward? The ones that we've already approved, they're not?
A lot of what's already been approved, a lot of that has the conduit in. Now they need to come behind that construction aspect and do the fiber pulling. So it's kind of backward pedaling as well to get to the areas that have already been pre-approved as well.
Okay.
So it's basically the whole gambit of it.
The board approved the request unanimously. During the April 25th meeting of the Bloomington Board of Park Commissioners, the board reviewed a policy pertaining to memorial benches in public parks. Operations Office Coordinator Barbara Dunbar explained the updates to the policy.
So I'll go over just what I changed or what we added for the memorial bench program. Under the policy section, the plaque personalization message and/or text is subject to review and approval by the Board of Park Commissioners. Simple, straightforward there.
Okay.
And then finally, in the number 7, it specifies that in the event of vandalism or other unanticipated events or acts, benches are warranted for 5 years against damages. If damaged beyond use within the first 5 years, the department will replace the bench and/or the plaque. We did not include theft there. These benches weigh close to 800 pounds. They're also permanently attached to the concrete slabs. So, and then under the trees, memorial tree program, I did the same thing there because there really is no difference between a memorial tree plaque and a memorial bench plaque. So the plaque personalization message and/or text is subject to review and approval by the Board of Park Commissioners.
Board member Jim Whitlatch asked Dunbar what the policy said about the possibility of withdrawing a plaque. Dunbar said they had not considered it.
We have somebody who we've done a plaque for that becomes untenable to have them on a plaque any longer.
Okay.
Because of something they've done or something along those lines where we may not want them on our plaque anymore. So it's just to give us a opportunity to have the discretion to remove any plaques we want to remove.
Discretion for the park board to remove a plaque.
Correct.
For any sorts, that can be, we can certainly add that to the policy.
The board approved the updates to both the memorial benches in parks and the commemorative tree program unanimously. They agreed to consider a policy update on plaque withdrawal at a later date. Next, during public comment, representatives from the Bloomington Football Club and the Monroe County Senior Baseball League Association shared their concerns with the board. Parent and member of the Bloomington Football Club, Kathleen Field, urged the board to increase the city's access to soccer fields.
Our first request on behalf of the BFC Parent Committee is to ask the Parks Board respectfully to direct the Parks Department to form a committee for the purpose of improving access to soccer fields in the city, specifically to try to get permanent outdoor soccer fields in the city established. And we'd like to work cooperatively with the Parks Department and to have a seat at that table. So we're asking that you use your authority to form this committee so that we can get started to improve opportunities and access for soccer. Our club has currently about 260 members, and there's more interest, but there's just not space in the city. And soccer, is the world sport. You don't need a lot of equipment. There's not a high barrier to entry, and unfortunately, we just lack the facilities, and we want to help improve the city of Bloomington by increasing access to soccer fields within our community.
Parent Richard Field said he's concerned about plans to convert Field 6 at Winslow Sports Complex to a soccer pitch.
I have 2 children who have played baseball at Winslow over the last 9 years, including on Field 6 over at Winslow Field the last couple of years. Just so you're clear, I have nothing against soccer. I'm not going to speak negatively about soccer as a sport or anything like that. I have friends with children who play soccer. Hi, Venus. I would like to point out that I have seen a BFC proposal floating around emails about converting Field 6 at Winslow to soccer only. And they're going to ask for a vote next month on that, which is not a lot of time for the senior league to prepare. And any exploratory committee that would propose this would need more time than that. And converting Field 6 at Winslow to soccer only would likely mean the end of the MCSLBA, the Monroe County Senior Baseball League, for Bloomington, Monroe County kids ages 13 and up. And I believe there are other options within the city, such as Bryant Park Field 3, Lower Cascades. Alcott Park was mentioned earlier today. BFC has mentioned that their goal is to utilize city parks, and Winslow Field 6 is utilized, and there are underutilized fields available. I get wanting more fields, but let's find a way that won't kill an established league. This shouldn't be a youth sport versus youth sport situation. I work for a rural electric cooperative, and one of our founding principles is cooperation among cooperatives, and I'd like to see that principle extended here to where MCSLBA, BJLBA are pulled into the conversation to find a reasonable solution for everyone.
Board member Kathleen Mills thanked the parents for voicing their concerns and said the Parks Department will further consider their suggestions during a work session. And we'll have more CATSweek after this message.
For hurting families in Monroe County.
A contribution to children who are vulnerable and in need of an advocate.
A staff that goes above and beyond to support and advocate for children in need of services.
The web of remarkable people who are dealing with difficult situations.
So many young people that are in need of help and trying to find a stable family, a stable place to live. Without the CASAs to make that happen, many of them would be unable to find a good home.
I love being that voice for the child who can't speak for themselves in court.
It takes me out of my comfort zone, and it also helps others.
CASA means supporting our community.
Being a CASA is making sure that your village is healthy and whole, and that the children in your village will someday be able to help the village as well.
A child who doesn't have a voice, maybe in their family situation or a school situation, now has a voice that can advocate for them.
I really enjoy working with children that are going through difficult times and letting them know that I care about their future.
We are privileged with our charge of representing the best interest of children. And so therefore we can advocate for exactly what they need without restriction, focusing on their best interest.
I want to repair the world one child at a time.
Welcome back to CATSweek. On April 24th, the Ellettsville Town Council discussed an ordinance regarding a water rate increase. Senior manager at Baker Tilly, Mitchell Eschweiler, shared the findings of their recent water rate study.
We were requested, along with Doug Baldessari, to prepare a water rate study to look at where does your water utility currently stand for its rates and charges, what are some of the things that need to be addressed, and to see if we would need to do some sort of rate increase for the utility. A little background, we filed with the IURC back in 2015 for a rate increase. That's the last time that the rates for the water utility were adjusted. So it's been about 8 years since the water utility rates have been formally adjusted through an IURC proceeding, which is what we would do here today if you were to go and approve a rate increase.
Eschweiler shared the history of the cash and investment balances for the town of Ellettsville.
You can see there over the past 3 years, cash balances have been relatively stable, but we do see from 2020 to 2022, they start to come down. Moving to the second section there, your revenues and expenses. This is really what's driving that decrease in cash that we saw from 21 to 22. You can see here your operating expenses are starting to grow and they're beginning to outpace your revenues. Some of the larger items we'll talk about later, payroll increases, purchase water from Bloomington, and we've also seen higher costs for materials and supplies, really driven by what we're seeing nationwide with inflation levels. One thing I just wanted to focus on at the bottom there is your historical coverage, also known as bond coverage. You can see there in 2020 it was 157%, and due to those rising expenses, we've seen that coverage come down to 44% for 2022. When you go and issue debt like you did back in 16, you're committing to have bond coverage of 125%. So as you can see for 22, because of those higher expenses, the coverage there for the bonds fell below the 125% mark in your bond ordinance.
He said that if the rate change is passed, the average residential user's cost would go from $24 to $32.
This is looking at a usage for 4,000 gallons. This is typically about an average residential user. You can see here Ellettsville's current rate, average user is paying $24.44. And we'll talk about some of the drivers of the increase, but after the proposed increase, you'd be looking at an average bill of $32.62. And you can just see some of the surrounding communities close to Ellettsville. You are on the lower end currently, and this is going to put you right about in the middle of the pack. And just for reference, a lot of these communities we do work with and know that they are also in the process of looking at rates. So it's not something uncommon at this time, especially with what we're seeing with the cost of labor and materials.
Eschweiler then shared the next steps if the council wanted to move forward with the water rate increase.
Just a little background on what steps would happen next. We would adopt a resolution in the bond ordinance. We would file, we're going to use a small utility filing with the IURC. They allow you to do this if you have less than 8,000 customers. It's a little leaner process than going through a full rate case. And this is a good one to do that because you're not issuing debt with the water utility. So through that process, we would file, they have a standard form, we'd file our work papers. They have the OUCC that works with the IRC. They'll go through all the work papers, they'll go through your financials, they'll prepare their own report. They'll come out and they'll say, we recommend this rate increase. And then after that happens, both sides kind of go back and forth and usually either reach a settlement, or if you wanted to go to the full case, which isn't always the most fun, but a lot of times you'll reach a settlement and that's the rate you'll formally adopt for the utility.
The next Ellettsville Town Council meeting will be held on May 8th. At the Bloomington Utilities Service Board meeting on April 24th, Director Vic Kelson gave a presentation on the Resource Recovery Program feasibility study.
By way of overview, as you know, we did an in-house study a couple of years ago or 3 years ago, working with a number of people inside and outside of city government to look really at what we could get in terms of gas generation from our wastewater plant at Dillman. We determined that we wouldn't make enough gas there to justify anaerobic digester at that site. Part of the reason was that the Dillman plant doesn't have a primary clarifier. So most of our primary solids are really an important source of energy for anaerobic digestion, but Dillman doesn't have primary solids. So we determined that it really wasn't going to be feasible.
Kelson explained that the project is eligible for an investment tax credit that is reserved for zero emissions projects.
This was included in the recent Inflation Reduction Act. This investment tax credit offsets a portion of the cost of building the renewable energy facilities. In our case, the digester itself, generator gear, and all of those kinds of things would be eligible for it. There would be a base credit value of 6%, another 2% base credit bonus if the project is constructed in a manner that meets domestic content requirements, which would be consistent with what the city of Bloomington does anyway. There's also a base credit bonus for being located in an energy community, which is a community that once had a significant energy industry but doesn't anymore. We may not be eligible for that one. But then there's a 5 times base credit bonus if the projects are executed in a way that use prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. The prevailing wage requirement is already consistent with Bloomington's, the city of Bloomington's business practices. The apprenticeship requirements we would have to work with the vendors to achieve, but that 5X base credit means that we could receive an investment tax credit that could be up to 40% of the cost of the actual equipment that qualified under the ITC.
Kelson gave a summary of the financial feasibility.
In order to make money on something like this, we would have to capitalize on the investment tax credits and environmental credits that are available. The project does have the potential to reach economy of scale such that it would be financially self-sustaining, and private party would have a higher cost of capital than we would, and of course they would want to make a return on their investment. There is regulatory and market risk in pursuing a project like this, so you have to be careful about your assumptions and look, and the financial model actually helps us assess how much the assumptions affect the final outcomes.
He also gave a summary of the benefits that the project could have for the community.
We would be reducing the amount of waste that would go to the landfill. Potentially, we would be helping maintain soil quality, and we would be eliminating the cost of hauling these biosolids to Terre Haute to put them in the landfill. So there is significant benefit there. There are also other benefits, job creation. There would be lots of construction jobs during the project. There would also be full-time operating positions needed to keep it going. That includes the people who would be collecting the waste and marketing the service of taking that high-strength waste from outside organizations. This would be also a sustainable organics disposal facility for local businesses. So it would give presumably restaurants and institutions a place to send things like food waste that would not require them landfilling it. So there's some opportunities there. Eventually, if things worked out, eventually there might be interest in some sort of residential collection system. That's really difficult to do. So at this point, we are not assuming that that would be happening.
The next Bloomington Utilities Service Board meeting will be held on May 8th. And that is all for CATSweek. Thank you for joining us. For CATS and WFHB, I'm Annalise Poorman.